Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's times where I feel like I have it, kind of figured out, and then it'll all just go upside down on me. And
A lot of
it's
my problem is if I'm not doing it every day,
yeah,
I lose the skill set. I'm like, oh yeah, I have no idea. I don't even know how to turn it on, which is frustrating. Because like when you're doing it, a couple of days in a row, you're like, I'm a master at this, and then you sleep, come back and go, I don't know what a cable is. So that's me every time, pretty much. So I do it a lot. I become obsessed over something and become like an overnight expert, which is the problem with the internet, and then forget it all in 5 minutes. That's why I still suck at jiu-jitsu.
well, I mean, so you know what? We'll pause for a second. Um, Welcome to the Off Colony podcast, and today our guest is Adam Machin. We already did this podcast, like I think it was about a 3 hour
Yeah.
interview and rant that was really good, and it was a super fun conversation. And
Yeah.
then I realized that I don't know what I'm doing, and we had an audio device that was off, and there's this crazy echo through the whole interview, so it's unwatchable garbage. The audio is absolute trash. I tried to fix it, went down that rabbit hole of trying to salvage the audio, couldn't do it. So we're redoing the audio, or the whole interview rather.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and in that interview, me and Adam talked, and we've said this in person to each other, but we are the same person, like replicated. Like it's not a physical doppelganger, but we have the same mental. Um, would you say deficiency?
At times,
we are
other
broken
times
in the same
superpower.
ways.
Very much so.
This is the story of my life too. Is it's just like diving into this thing where once the gears are moving, it starts clicking, and it's like, oh, I could do this. I can understand this.
Yeah.
And I think I could probably get to the level of being proficient at this. But then through, I don't know, random events, life, or other interests, I'll find myself kind of drifting off, and then I forget that I even did that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally.
What do we do about that? It's brutal.
More. No, I was going to say more drugs, but neither of us do any drugs. So maybe that's the problem. We need to do some. But I think. Okay, so there's many tangents that's going to happen to anybody that's viewing or listening to this. I'm going to apologize in advance because of exactly what Phil just said. We have a very similar way of thinking, so there's going to be many tangents. So we'll get it out there. Sorry, but stick with us. It can be entertaining. So I think one of the things with that ADD brain is, and this sounds like I think a lot of myself, and I don't. I'm just aware of certain things. When you have that creative brain and that ADD brain and that high drive combined, it sounds egotistical, but you tend to be able to turn your hand to things quite well. And people often say, fuck, you're so annoying, man. You can just pick up this thing and, what's the John Lennon saying, give me an instrument and within 5 minutes, I'll be able to give you a tune kind of thing. It's something like that. And I feel that we both possess a similar ability for usually maybe more practical based things. For me, especially, if it's with my hands and I can kind of figure it out. And we become proficient fairly quickly because we have this ability to obsessively focus on something and download all of that fucking information into our brains. And because I'd say that we're relatively intelligent human beings, we can kind of digest that and make it happen. And that in itself is an interesting thing. And it's also a bit of a curse because you can do these things and you do reach a level of proficiency relatively quickly. For me, it leads to never actually truly mastering any one thing because I'm like, oh, I can do that thing. And then I'll kind of solve the problem of it a little bit and get bored of it and go, oh, next thing I'm going to be. So my obsession this month is, and I'm not a gun nut. I'm from England. We don't have the ability to possess weapons at all. I live in America now, and I'm like, I'm going to get into extra long distance shooting. It looks
cool.
fucking cool, you know, like with the
Yeah.
optics and stuff. Because my physical health has been a little bit, you know, my knees are basically giving so much trouble in training. I've not been able to train as much. I'm like, I'm going to get into shooting, you know.
Cool.
And now I'm already like down the rabbit hole. I've called my friend that's into shooting, and we've like arranged a date. And I'm like, I wonder how long that's going to last, you know, before I go, new thing. But it's useful at times, I think, you know.
Yeah.
Weirdly,
I mean, I've heard it my whole life, the jack of all trades, master of nothing kind of argument that, you know, super focused people have, you know.
yeah.
I don't know if I agree with it.
Yeah,
it doesn't work for my personality. Like, I would not feel fulfilled in my daily life if I knew, like, well, the only way that I'm going to ever be the most, you know, amazing tattooer that's ever walked the earth is if that's all I do 12 hours a day for 50 years.
Yeah.
Even if that is the end result, I don't want it. Like, life's too, like, there's just too many things to taste and try and do. And I don't know if mastery is really a concern of mine. I like proficiency.
Yeah.
But even when it comes to like jujitsu, like I've been doing that off and on now since I was in my 20s. And my goal has always been a timeline. So I like having like, so my goal is to be able to train till I'm 60.
Yeah.
My goal isn't, you know, taking gold at Worlds or getting my black belt, or, you know, it's more just like, can I stay mobile and can I enjoy doing this thing until I'm 60? So like, I think my brain just has different goals with pretty much everything, you know, like be it painting or like, I just enjoy doing stuff. I enjoy life.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm the best in the world seems just kind of irrelevant. You know, I like to be better than I was yesterday. And so if I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, man, you know what I should get into is long distance shooting. It's like, well, you're learning something. Yeah. Yeah. Whether or not you become like Olympic level long distance shooter, I think it's irrelevant. Like, or at least for my brain just doesn't do that. You know, like I don't want to sacrifice my whole life to get to the point where I can be the best, whatever. I mean, some things do that. Like tattooing used to be, you know, super important like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I have dipped into that sort of obsession before, but I think as I've gotten older, I don't do that, which then opens up more opportunities to get into all sorts of weird stuff. Like even down to like doing this, you know, it's like, it just becomes a time thing where it's like, man, life's so short. How much can I do? You know, like, life's short. And I mean, like, we're getting older fast, and you're starting to realize like, I don't really have that much time to do that much stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the, you know, I don't know if scary is, it's not scary, but it's just the reality of it. Like, you'd have to be,
the reality of it is a little frightening, I think, you know, when you do have a lust for learning and doing, you know, realizing that your time is not infinite I've been dealing with that. I've been dealing with that a lot recently. The old midlife crisis, you know.
How old are you now?
43.
Okay. Yeah.
So what's interesting about what you were saying there, and also since last time we talked, it is interesting. I've had a little bit of a reframe on how I've been thinking about things, life, and, you know, the bigger questions, I guess. And I'm definitely feeling a little bit more positive about a lot of things. And that point you just made about needing to reach a level of, or not needing to reach a level of mastery with everything, and, you know, just enjoying things for what they are, and for like, okay, well, this week, this is the thing that you're interested in doing. And, you know, next week, it actually might be something totally different, or you might not like that. And you might go, oh, the idea of it was awesome, but then in reality, I didn't enjoy it. And I would almost torture myself and make myself do the thing that I had become interested in, even if I didn't enjoy it, because I was afraid of being inconsistent. And as you know, with an ADD brain, and I hate to keep mentioning that because everybody likes to label themselves as one thing or another now. It seems to be something we do in society. We label our mental disorders before we give somebody our second name, but I think it is relevant to the conversation, and at no point am I going, I identify as an ADD brain. It's like, I just have this thing that makes me think a certain way,
Well, and I'll even stop you in the fact, like, it's labeled as a disorder, we'll say. ADD. I mean, I have dyslexia, and that's a learning disability. Classified as learning disability. And I was undiagnosed until I was in my mid-20s. And so struggling all through school was always super difficult because, like, I couldn't read, so I couldn't do algebra. I couldn't, I like, all these other things suffered because of this undiagnosed, reading disability.
Same story, my friend.
Again, but the older I've gotten, the more I realize that, like, it's not really a disability as much as it's just a difference. And because the school system and the education system is built upon a structure of literature first, it derails your education. But there's nothing about it that's necessarily a deficiency. It's just that our brains work totally different, and in a sense, you're statistically way more prone to be creative. You're way more prone to be self-employed. You're way more, entrepreneurs are way more often dyslexics. You also have a higher rate of being incarcerated, because in order to get through the system as a dyslexic, you have to learn how to cheat. You're not going to pass the test unless you learn how to cheat. And so there are all these other things that come that are deficiencies, basically because it's undiagnosed. And so I think with the ADHD thing too, it's like, on one side, like, it is a deficiency if you're trying to have a normalized attention span. But the beauty of it is, when you do find interest and when you do find passion, it does turn into a creative obsession that can be super beneficial. So
without a doubt,
other people don't have that at all. So it's just a different way of thinking. I don't know if it's necessarily a handicap as much as it's just that we're built different, and because of that, we don't fit into that box, right? And dude, we live in the tattoo world. How many tattooers do you know with dyslexia? I mean, it's insane. So somehow we all found this thing because we're all kind of wired, just more creatively, whatever.
Tattooing, and to some point now, 11 years in or something, jiu-jitsu, but are the two things in life that have ever kept my attention. And we'll get into this later, I'm sure. Tattooing's in a very strange place right now, and my relationship with it is in a really tenuous place. But
why? What's going on? I mean, are you still up with Josh and Sutton?
Yep. I'm at Outpost in Hudson, New York, which is great, and I love it. I absolutely love being up there. It's just quiet, man. Like, across the board, I don't know anybody that's crushing it at the moment. And moving to a smaller, newer shop that has a different clientele, or isn't really the walking clientele. It wasn't even really a shop as such. It was kind of a private space for them to work in out the back of the jewelry shop. So, it has been a little harder to get the clientele started right in the middle of a recession when people are not getting tattooed, So, but I love the decision to move there, and I love being with those guys. But tattooing she's a harsh mistress at times, and I think anybody that's done it for a long time, probably feels fairly similar, or has at some point just been like, man, And this feels different than 2007, 2008 to me. You know, I opened a shop.
When did you start?
2003-ish.
Okay.
I think 20 something years. I think. You know, I think everybody, if they're being honest, you know, unless you're booked up with like large scale stuff that you've been working on for years, if you're relying on a little bit more of a walking clientele or a smaller piece, or even people that work on large scale stuff, I bet they've felt that recently, the last year, you know, clients have been like, I got to take this one out, you know, like the price of everything else has gone up and my wages have not gone up. So I have to cut something out. And unfortunately, it has to be this luxury that's not necessary in any way. And tattooing, I feel, has always been kind of recession proof to a point. But this time around, I don't know. Something feels a little different.
Where'd you tattoo in 08?
I was back in Manchester.
Okay.
I actually opened my own shop.
Was it busy?
It did not take long. It didn't take long. It was like 2 weeks of sitting there going, oh, fuck, what did I do? You know, because I was in a small kind of semi-rural town, like a market town, fairly affluent town, but not tattooey at all. There'd never been a tattooer there in the last 100-odd years. Like nobody had ever tattooed in that town. I honestly didn't feel a recession.
Did the same recession that hit us in 07, 08, like 09, like that was pretty, you know, it was pretty tough in America. Did that hit England?
It did not. I'm guessing not as bad. I'm guessing not as bad, but it did affect. It did because you know, I remember saying to my second mentor, Phil Bond, I was like, "Man, is this the right time to do this?" And he's like, "It's the perfect time to do it." Right.
Why did he say that?
Recession, and it wasn't wrong. It worked.
Why did he say it was the perfect time?
Well, it's like everything's fucking cheap. Landlords want to, you know, people's businesses. He said, sadly, you know, but he's like, businesses close. There's leases up available. People want to get that building filled, you know, because they're paying their mortgage on it usually. So now's a good time to take on a space. I don't know if there was an issue with. This shows my naivete with understanding, you know, global economics. I don't know if the inflation was exactly the same problem-wise, but, you know, I could afford to buy wood then, you know, to build the shop out. But actually, wood's not too bad right now, but, you know, it's been bad.
I mean, the last few years have been super weird globally.
Super weird.
Yeah. So this is I mean, I've been tattooing, I think I started in 96. So this is, 27, 28 years now. And I think, you know, 99 was strange for sure. 2001, you know, was, I was living in San Jose, and that was kind of the end of the .com crash.
Yeah. And
then September 11th. So that was kind of weird. And then 06, 07, 08 was pretty, and, you know, economy was bad, and I was moving back and forth to San Francisco and Tampa.
Yeah.
And so those years were tough. But this one feels different, you know, where
it does.
You know, I've been historically busy. You know, I'd say I've been booked solid for the last 12 years or so.
Yeah.
And it's pretty thin right now. You know, I mean, I definitely have an easier schedule. And I'm fine. I mean, I think I've done it for so long that, you know, the biggest concern. Yeah, I try to take concerns and worry to like the absolute worst end, just to see with, you know, my mind, like how bad could it get, you know, and how bad it could get would just be that the well dries up and no one wants to get tattooed anymore, and I just have to go do something else, you know.
Yeah.
There will be a point, I think, where that happens, you know, be it because your clientele all dried up, or because economy completely crashed, or people just lost interest in tattooing, or there's more tattooers than there are clients. You know, something's bound to give at some point, or you just lose interest and you do go do something else. So
it's so strange because, again, like kind of rewinding back a little bit, you know, tattooing is the only thing that ever really kept me focused, engaged, passionate, and even when it was difficult or times were hard, that's all I wanted to think about doing, you know, work-wise as a career and as a profession, and saying, even though you don't want to tell people, you know, when I used to go to bars, you know, in the bar, like, what do? You get pretty tired of telling people you're a tattooer pretty quickly, right? You're like, oh, I'm a garbage man, you know, because you don't want to engage in, you know, talking about it in the bar or whatever. But, you know, I never thought I would say I'm anything other than I'm a tattooer. And I've been faced with a very, you know, a very serious reality of not being able to say that anymore. You know, it's got to a point at times when I'm like, I have responsibilities, I have bills to pay. I got to do something else. You know, I'm not making a living. And, you know, some of this is my own fault. You know, I'm not blaming the saturation point or the economy 100%. I am blaming it somewhat. But, you know, not always making the best decisions financially, you know, will lead you to, when times are a little bit thin, being like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do? And the reality of it is like, I did start a new business with the printing that is still moving, it's still going, but it's a new business, man. And you know what it's like. New business is just, you just pour money in the hole until, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in, you know. So there's a very, you know, real conversation I had to have with myself and with, you know, my loved ones and stuff. It's like, maybe it's time to do something else. And I've been, you know, looking at picking up construction and that kind of thing, and carpentry. And
the crazy thing with printmaking is you work so hard and your overhead is so high, and on your materials cost so much. And then when people get their product, they just completely, like, they have zero appreciation for how hard it is, and will nitpick the smallest thing. And then you end up eating an order that derails you for months because for some reason, this person that you're dealing with is just so, they demand perfection at such a high level. I mean, I try really hard to make everything, you know, as buttoned up and perfect as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're not. You know what I mean? They're not. And the reality is I could probably do a pretty subpar job on a client.
Yep.
And when I'm done, they're still thrilled that they got tattooed.
Yeah.
And with printmaking, like, the attention to detail is insane. What people demand it's pretty impressive. So it's so much work and it's so little money that it does become something you like doing. Yeah. You know, you do it because you love doing it. There's really not, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of money in
it. There's not a huge financial benefit to it, especially when, you know, and I hope this doesn't sound vulgar, but, you know, we get compensated relatively well for making, you know, tattoos for people. And it's a lot of work, it's a lot of hard work, but you kind of get used to that. And then, you go to a job like printmaking where the man hours and the work is the same. It's very time consuming, and there's a lot of menial things that you have to do. I mean, especially with the type of printing you do, you know, the process is super important and tedious at times, and then the end result is it's fabulous, it's great, it is rewarding. You get paid nothing for it. Nothing.
And it might not be the best analogy, but, you know, if you're doing these little teeny small little like those are the people that come back for a touch up and a complaint, and they're upset because, you know, their $60 thing was a little off or whatever. Whereas if you do a back piece on someone that's thousands of dollars, that they're not complaining about anything. They love it. Yeah. And so it becomes this thing of like, well, why, as tattooers, like, why would we even want to deal with the little small complainy client, right? Like, that's the one that's like $65. Like, you sure you can't do it for 50? You know, and it's like, you're dealing with that side. Yeah. And then the other side is you could stay busy doing fun stuff that they just adore you for it. So it's like, it is a weird, I don't know. It's just like a strange kind of conundrum you find yourself in. And I think that applies in printmaking also, where, you know, if like what I'm doing, because it's art, the imperfections are fine. Whereas like what you're doing, where it's like a shirt graphic, like people just demand this like thing where you're like, man, it's like, it's just like, it's kind of crazy. Their expectations are higher for
a non-permanent
than they
essentially,
are
disposable item.
Right.
It's, I mean,
Whereas it's, as soon as it's got like an art thing stamped on it, it's like, well, it could be messed up, and they love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it in person. I know, like after the convention last year, but like, again, being newer to a business as well, you're like, is this me? Am I making a mistake, or am I not that I'm saying my client would be in the wrong, but you're pushing ink through a screen onto a shirt that's a soft substrate that moves around and then dries differently. It's like tattooing in that you're like, if you look at it this close, you're going to find imperfections, but the overall effect is what you want. But like clients that will sweat you over crazy things that, you'll try and do all your checks and balances beforehand. You'll be like, okay, is this golden yellow golden enough? Send them a pic kind of thing. They're like, yeah, absolutely, that's good.
Right.
Then you send the order out to them. They're like, yeah, I don't like the yellow, man. And you're like, I mean, okay, I feel you, but I did double check with you, and even if it was like a Pantone match, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, but in person, I don't like it. Can you refund the order or whatever? And I'm like, well, and you have to fucking eat it. Most of the time I have to be like, yep, sure, okay, reprint. But fortunately, the ones that I've had that have kind of been that way, it's been a smaller run. So it's been like 25 pieces. I'm like, try and be as polite as possible and say, okay, it's 25 pieces. You have to sell 25 shirts that cost you $5 to have printed each, right?
Yeah.
Or probably less. It wasn't even a 3-color, whatever. So $2.50 each plus the blank, right, to have printed. You're going to sell them. I see you selling them for $35.
Yeah.
And there's 25 of them. And because your vision of the golden yellow is not exactly as how it's come through, it's still golden yellow. The print is good. The design is cool because it's your design. It's what you wanted. You're going to sell them. You're not, or changing that yellow is not going to alter whether you sell them or not. That's down to your marketing or whatever, or your audience. But that conversation still gets met with, don't care. I want that yellow this way now.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, cool, I'll do it. And it's so weird. Like, because they have the option of that. Whereas with tattooing, like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever had anyone turn around and go, I don't like the green that we looked at and chose. They're like, fuck yeah, it's cool, I don't know. It's a weird, it is a weird thing.
I do feel like that's what makes tattooing art students a nightmare.
Oh, they're the worst. I love them,
because
they're the worst.
They're like, they know art. They know like art. So they'll sit there and nitpick stuff where you're like, what are you talking about? Like, like you're 20 years old. You don't know art. Like, but because, so yeah, probably, with that regards, working, making shirts for tattooers is probably a nightmare.
It's very difficult. I don't want to say they all are. Some are fucking great. They have like really cool understanding of what is going to look good and what is going to sell. Some people understand that. I didn't when I started making shirts. A lot of tattooers, are probably just committing suicide in my printing business here, but like a lot of tattooers want to print the ugliest shit and like 58 million color crazy wild designs. I'm like, dude, it looks amazing as a drawing, as an illustration, as a tattoo. On a t-shirt, it's hideous. It is not essentially fashion, which is, we're all wearing it, that's what it is. Design, fashion design, logo design, graphic design, they all work in a very specific way. And it took me a while of printing to start being able to give people advice and say, hey, 7 colors is a lot. You don't need 7 colors. You want to sell something? Look at, because that's the other thing as well. Tattooers are like, I want to make money, man. I want to sell these. I'm like, well, you better make a lot of them, because t-shirts are not where you make a lot of money unless you sell a lot of them,
Right. Unless you're Metallica.
Exactly. Your profit margins are small for the printer and for the person who's selling shirts. Sorry, your profit margins are small, especially compared to tattooing. So it's volume is where you make your money. You want volume. You want something that's going to sell to everybody. And I'm like, I try and be diplomatic and say, okay, look at schools of design, look at eras of design, and what is prominent, what jumps out. And I'm like, take I did a shirt actually, and it sold terribly, but no, uh, Russian propaganda posters, right? They adhere to a very specific style and color palette, and there is a reason why they do that.
Yeah,
it's because it makes you go, holy shit, when you look at it, right? That's what a t-shirt should do. That's like, if you want to sell t-shirts, you should be able to grab attention, from across the road, like a good tattoo. It should be simple, be broke down in a certain way, have a hierarchy, visual hierarchy, and that kind of thing. And you kind of like, I'll try and talk people through that and be like, hey, if you want some feedback, think about that. And they're like, yeah, no, I want 7 colors. And you're like, got you, no problem. It's going to cost you more money, and you're not going to sell any. But it's an interesting business.
Yeah. So with tattooing, like what has been something specific that stands out in your mind as like the almost deal breaker?
Yeah,
the almost I didn't make it kind of story.
Yeah, I got a good one. It is a good one. So, again, sounding egotistical, I'm going to let it out there. My first tattoo I did was actually a good tattoo. I saw it a couple of years back. Somebody sent me the picture. It's like, fuck, that still holds up. That's good. Cool.
That's awesome.
I had a good mentor that helped me pick the right thing and the right person. And I had an affinity for drawing since I was really young. And it's about one of the only things I've ever been confident in myself, is my ability to do that. And the first one was fucking good. And I was like, shit. And I took off kind of running with tattooing. Like, I was doing portraits pretty quick, and they were pretty good because I used to draw a lot of portraits, and I think it was maybe my second year of tattooing, I think. And I was so, absorbed with tattooing, fucking excited about it, and any opportunity to do it and work conventions, I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And my mentor didn't do a lot of conventions. He'd done it. He was, in his mid 50s, I think, when he taught me to tattoo. But so he was over that. He was a family man, liked his working class Manchester town, didn't want to leave it. But we would do the Manchester Tattoo Convention. And I did that, and it was a success and really good, and I enjoyed it, and I started to meet people. And this was about the time that the London Tattoo Convention had started. It was maybe 2 or 3 in. And as I'm sure you remember, that was an invite-only convention, right? You couldn't just pay to go like most of the... I mean, I don't know what they're like nowadays, but like, there was ones that you could pay to buy a booth, and there was others that you had to be like in the club. You had to be invited to it. And I didn't realize, but London was that. But I knew some of the motorcycle affiliates that would run the show from the Manchester chapter. And we got along really well. The president was a really nice guy, and he was like, you want to do the London convention? I called him up. It's like, hey, can I get into the London show? And he's like, let me see what I can do. And he got me in. And I didn't realize that was a fucking huge deal at the time. I was just like, yeah, right. So excited. And I go and I have like this fucking lame portfolio. I mean, there was a handful of good tattoos in it, but I'd probably only done, a couple of 100 tattoos,
What year was this?
2000. I want to say it was 2004 or 5. I could be wrong on the date. Okay. And I rolled up. And I was on my own. My boss didn't come with me. He's like, oh, you're on your fucking own with that, son, kind of thing. And I went up there and I reset. So here's how we identify it. Joshua Carlton had written his book on realistic tattooing, his ebook, I think. And it had just come out, or I just got a copy of it. And so like the fucking day before, and this is my brain and how it works, and I was really into like no outline fucking portraits,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's a trip compared to what I love now, but that's what I used to do. I want to do like no outline, color realism and stuff. And
I would never guess that,
dude. I'll find some photos and send you them. But awesome. So the black and gray stuff is still holding up. Of course, the color stuff looks like shit, But I read his book and reset every single one of my sheens like the day before I went to the London convention. So they were all set like cutback liners, like tiny stroke, real fast. Never tattooed with them like that. I was just like, wow, my work's going to look like his, makes sense. So I get to London Convention, I'm setting up. I'm next to, I think his name was Nico from Amsterdam or Slick Nick. He was really nice, actually. He was super cool to me. And like fucking Robert Hernandez is down there. And that was who I was super into at the time, you know.
Okay.
Robert Hernandez, Philip Lou's over there, Paul Booth's over there. I don't know. You might have been there. I don't know. We didn't know each other.
I mean, I did the first 5 or 6. I don't remember.
Was it I think it was still at the Tobacco Dock, was it? Or...
Yeah, I think I did all of those.
Yeah. So yeah, you all been there. And I reset all my machines, and I didn't have any flash. I didn't even understand the concept of flash. My boss never did that. Or he did that in the fucking 50s through the 70s.
Yeah.
He just custom did everything, and he did beautiful Japanese work and beautiful portraits. So that's kind of what I knew. I didn't understand the concept of having designs with you or anything like that. I just turned up, had a sketchbook, you know, and I actually ended up snagging a couple of like decent jobs. And one of them was like an angel with a gravestone, and it went well. And I was like, okay, this is good, you know. And I've got my like shitty photos like sellotaped to the wall behind me when everybody else has got their banner and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a little different, this place, you know. And I remember to this day this feeling. And the funny thing of this London convention is a lot of friendships that have remained very, very solid to me to this day were made with this, like at the end of this story, right? So it was a nightmare and also a very beautiful experience. So anyway, this guy comes along and he wants a tattoo on the back of his hand. And it's a bit like the album by The Prodigy, Jilted Generation, right? It's got like a face being like screaming, face pushing through, almost if you like vacuum sealed it, you know?
Sure.
It's like that, but it wasn't exactly that. It was like that, and it was held down with like needles, like pins. And he was a body piercer, of course he was. And he's like, yeah, I want to get that on the back of my hand, like this big, you know. So it's like screaming plastic wrapped face with needles. I was like, hell yeah, cool, okay. And so I go to start tattooing him, and it's the back of a hand, you know. And my machines are running so fast, and I didn't outline anything then, you know. I like built it up as I went along, you know.
Sure.
And he's like, oh, you don't outline stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, it's just I always work, and I'm kind of like talking my way. And you know that feeling like when you're tattooing, and we've all had it, when you suddenly realize that this is getting away from you and it's not going how it should. And this is the first time I'd ever had that feeling, right?
Cold
For some reason, I managed to like breeze through the first couple of years tattooing and make good tattoos. A few times you're like, oh, fucking. But the way I used to tattoo and the way I was taught to tattoo, everything was outlined with a type 3, like what now we call, you know, a helitype 3, you know, but like bug pin 3s. And then I would power line, essentially, my boss called it, with a 3-round shader. So you would shuffle down the outline with the 3-round shader. So you got a perfect line, and that line stays like that for fucking 25 years, right? And that's how I learned to tattoo. So even if you like fucked up your outline a little bit, you would always be going back and smoothing it out, you know, building the line up and making it perfect. So I never really had that moment of like, oh, no, this is not looking good. This was the first time. London Convention, lots of big name tattooers, and this guy, you know, wearing a fucking kilt, and I had like crazy. I think I either had dreadlocks or like a curly afro at the time, and I was so into tattooing and so in love with it. And I remember getting like maybe halfway into this tattoo and starting to get that cold feeling inside, and you're sweating but you're cold, and you're like, oh no, oh fuck, and you wipe it just to be like, it's good, it just looks a little red or a little beaten up because it's the hand and it's swelling or whatever, and your machine's running at 5 million miles an hour. And I'm like, no, this is a bad tattoo, this is not good, and I don't know if I can save this.
Oh
yeah, dude, it was terrifying. And you know, when you do a tattoo that you're not 100% with, sometimes when you get that feeling, or it's been a long time now, and then you would see it when you came back and healed, and you'd be like, it's not that bad. It's all right. A little bit more black there, and tighten that up, and it's okay. It's actually all right. This was not that. This was like, I have lost my way. The stencils. Sorry. So I didn't even know how to make a stencil properly at this point, right? We had the the secretary Thermofax that we all used. We used the thin brown paper instead of the white backing sheet that everybody else uses.
Wait, why?
That's how I learned. That's how I was taught.
Crazy.
No idea. So the bit that everyone throws away, that's what I used to make my stencils with. And I'd never seen a sheet of carbon and a piece of paper and, hand traced before onto the carbon paper, onto the paper, sorry. I'd never done that before. And this was before that every single convention you went to had a Thermofax there. So you had to make your stencils by hand.
Sure.
So I think I had a basic comprehension of how that worked, and I managed to do it. But, consequently, the stencil fucking sucked because it was on like a big piece of thick, almost cardboard, like I was trying to do it with an old acetate. And so the stencil had wiped off, and like it just didn't look like anything, and I was like, I remember thinking at one point, okay, I'm going to put my machines down. I'm going to say I'm going to the bathroom. I'm going to fucking run away. I'm done. I can never tattoo again. There's a Hell's Angels convention, like I'm going to get my hands fucking chopped off. I can't believe I've done this. And this is the only thing, remember, that I've ever had confidence in my life doing is like making art.
Right.
And I was like, I am fucking this up. And I learned all about having ginormous balls that day of just being like, you got to keep going. You cannot just say, I'm fucking this up, dude. I'm sorry. And I finished the tattoo. It was bad. It was probably all going to fall out the next day because it was so light, probably. But, because of that grey wash, when you fucking, it's working like that fast, it just goes so red. It's probably not even there. And I remember, and this is probably, I'm going to sound like a dick, but one of the only times, and the guy was such a sweetheart, it was one of the only times where somebody's kind of gone, cool, man. Thanks a lot. And we both know it sucks.
He knew right away.
He knew. I've replayed it in my head, and it's been 20 years now. And I'm like, was it that bad? Were you just freaking out? It was that bad. Yeah. I did a bad tattoo on this guy's hand and felt so fucking bad. And I was like, that's it. I quit. I can't do that. Yeah. I can't do that to people. And I got so drunk for the next 3 days. I didn't tattoo anymore. I was like, fuck that. No way.
Right.
I like closed up shop. I went downstairs and I met my friend Stephanie, who at the time worked for Wildcat Jewelry in Brighton, French girl that was working over there at the time. And we're lifelong friends now. That's a whole nother section of my life where I lived out in France and tattooed out there because of her and stuff, and it was fucking incredible, and we're still friends now.
Yeah, I didn't know.
But that friendship was made out of me being so fucking drunk. That's like everybody's friend. I'm like, yo, I suck at tattooing, but I'm gonna have a good time because I was just drowning my sorrows. So that moment for me was the make or break moment where I actually thought I'd broken it. I thought, that's it. I can't do it anymore. Like I did a bad thing. And that was, to this day, the single worst moment of my entire life, I think, feeling-wise.
That feeling's terrible. Everybody, if you've tattooed for any length of time, you've had it. That pit in your gut, it's terrible,
Yeah. It's bad for so many reasons, For so many reasons. You're like, the one thing I'm good at, turns out not so much.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm confident in, overconfidence, and you're doing this to somebody and they've got to pay you and live with that. It's a fucking horrific feeling. And yeah, everybody that's a tattooer that's watching this, it's going to be like, yeah, but we've been there,
Well, and it is weird because I don't think there's any way to get at least this far into tattooing and not feel like it's the most important thing on the planet while you're doing it. You know, like, and I don't think just in like some weird like obsession kind of way, but like even still when I'm tattooing someone, it's like the tunnel vision kind of like everything caves in where it's like the most important thing today is making sure that one, I mean, the tattoo's done right, but also that just this person that you're working on, like this, you know, soul that you're spending time, that you're making their experience like, you know, somewhat beneficial. There's all this pressure that gets built up onto it that we totally overthink it. Like it's not brain surgery. You know,
we're not saving lives.
It's not. We're not, you know, but when you're doing it, it's just as important, or it feels that way.
It is.
Otherwise, why do it?
Right.
Yeah, like if you don't think that this is like changing their life positively or negatively, I just don't. My brain doesn't understand why you would do it. Like the guys, and there are really good tattooers that have a very nonchalant attitude about it, where it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, man. You know, win some, lose some. Like you got to break some eggs, and like they just have that attitude. If I had, for my personality, if I thought that way, I would go do something else.
Yeah, agreed.
Like I just wouldn't. I don't understand I don't understand doing it if you're not fascinated with it at like an obscene level, you know. Even all these years later, it's still, you know, and it happens where sometimes, and the dyslexia thing, makes lettering a freaking nightmare, right? And I mean, I can't tell you the cold sweats. It's just, and I've never spelled anything wrong. But man, every time I've ever done anything lettering, it's 100% spelt wrong for some length of that.
Yep. 100%.
And I'll tell the client, I'll be like, "Are you sure this is spelled right? Like,
read this again."
We'll go through it and I'll read it to them, and we'll double check and cross check and triple check. And I'm so neurotic to make sure it's done right. But man, every time halfway through it, it's like, oh no.
Yeah,
like,
you
there's something
yourself.
wrong. And that anxiety sucks so bad.
It's sorrowful, man.
Dude, I tattooed my friend a few months ago, a girl I trained jiu-jitsu with, and did like a pretty traditional panther head on her belly. And there was, if she's listening to this, she's going to be like, "Oh, thanks, dude." But there was a point where the mouth of the panther, the way the incisor fangs kind of came over, and the way the tongue folded, and then the bottom teeth came, there was a point where I almost, it just, the way there was no line competition. Like the tattoo's fine. I'll post it on this video so you can see it. But there was just a point where these lines kind of converged. And as I was filling in the dark of the tongue and the dark, pockets behind, I almost blacked out the tooth. Like, and there would have been, I mean, and I had I was right there ready to do it. And it's like high on her stomach, so it hurts. She's not having the most fun. I'm trying to get her through it. And I just about blacked the tooth out, and there'd be no fixing it. It would be a toothless panther, And there's things like that where it's like, I was half a second from ruining it.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh no, that's the tooth, and I stopped before anything. But it's like, that's the side of tattooing where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, even when I feel like I'm doing it well, you can botch it. I mean, it could just happen, so it's, and sometimes it's, the anxiety gets high,
Like I said, she's a harsh mistress at times. It's
Yeah.
like that's what, okay. So, this all goes, it's cyclical, isn't it? But this goes back to like why I get upset that tattooing isn't quite what it's always been for me, or like why I get really upset at the thought of not doing tattooing forever. It's like thinking about a marriage. It's about thinking about your partner that you fucking love and going, oh, I wonder if we'll always be together. It's fucked up. You don't do that because you wouldn't get married if you felt like that, right? But
Right.
if that thought comes into your head, it's fucking heartbreaking. It hurts. And that's how I feel about tattooing. And it's because you care, and it's because it's fucking magical.
So
And
do
it
you
gets
do you
quiet,
think
you know?
that tattooing has lost some of its
We have this juxtaposition, right? Of essentially we're business people. We need to make money. You know, we want to make money to live a life to a certain standard. But you know, tattooing at one time was not something for everybody. It was something for people who really fucking wanted it. You know, regardless of why they wanted it. Tattoo shops were scary and weird, or you thought they were. They probably weren't, but you know,
yeah.
before we got tattooed, you know, you were like, fuck. It's this magical thing that you don't know what it feels like. You don't know what's inside of this. The shop, first two shops I worked in didn't have windows. You know, they were just flash on the outsides or painted black. You know, like they were scary places to go in. And so you had to really want it. And people have, you know, so many different reasons that we don't need to talk about because they're special. And that's what makes tattooing special, is it's this unspoken thing between people that have them. You know, TV shows have made you think you have to have a reason to get a tattoo, or, you know, it has to be about this trauma or that. And you don't have to tell that story. That may be the case for a lot of people with tattooing. And I know for sure, you know, people are writing papers on how, you know, trauma healing through tattooing. And it's like, yeah, no fucking shit. People have been doing that since the beginning of fucking time, you know, like, but let's share that between the people that it's important to and need to hear it. You know, I don't think we need to make a podcast about that, you know, and like, I feel that that's very, very now, you know, we all need to talk about that and like bring that into the academic world. And like, okay, maybe a paper on it is interesting, but you know, it's special and magical and we fucking know it, you know? And you know, you used to have to really want to go into the shop to get it done, which is the point I was kind of got lost on there. Nowadays, it's like, and this is I don't mean any offense to anybody, you know, and I apologize if I do upset people, but like now it's like, you know, soccer mom comes in with her mother and her daughter, and they all get tattooed, and then Chad the banker comes in with his son and brings him in for his first tattoo, and like it's so easy and normal and non-threatening to get tattooed nowadays. Like that's in one way is a really good thing because everybody should feel accepted and that they can be part of the world, sure, but we've lost a little fucking bit of something in that it's now the mainstream to be tattooed. It's now punk rock to not be fucking tattooed, you know?
Totally. 100%.
It's like, yo, you don't have any tattoos? Fuck, you're an individual, you know? Like, tattooing used to be scary. Tattooing used to be fuck you, you know? Like, now it's kind of like, you know, and again, it's a nice reaction, and I love talking to people, and you know, I like nice reactions to things. You know, so when a you know 80-year-old lady goes, "Oh, your neck tattoo is beautiful. That's so pretty and nice," I'm like, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate that," and I do.
Yeah,
but at the same
not the
time,
reaction you were expecting. Yeah.
No, you know, like tattooing's like fucking armor, man. You know, like it's this thing that like is there to protect you or to give you confidence when you didn't fucking have any. And, you know, all these things that we probably don't talk about to our friends. It's like, yeah, I got tattooed because, I mean, I've always been a big dude. I've always been tall, fairly strong. No real reason to be nervous about who I am in myself. But I'm a really fucking sensitive baby in a lot of ways, you know, and it took me a long time to gain confidence in my own self and my own masculinity and you know, I learned to fight and things like that, and that really helped. But you know, I had tattoos because they made me feel tough to the outside world, you know. Like everybody thought, oh, Adam's such a sweet, soft, gentle man, and I was like, no, I want to look tough and look like a man, you know. And you know, the gender has nothing to do with it, but in my eyes, for me, as a young man getting tattooed, I felt like I looked fucking cool and I looked tough, you know?
Right.
And tattooing, it's kind of lost that a little bit, you know, and that's made it for me.
Yeah.
It's lost some magic, you know, along the
I
way.
think the difficulty I see in the switch isn't necessarily just whether or not they're getting something small or whether they're, square, white collar banker or like whatever. But I think the danger is that when you were getting tattooed and you were doing it because it was this underground, it had a cool factor to it that was just kind of hard to even like articulate.
Absolutely.
There was a personality that kind of attached to that did not care what anybody said. They were going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like, I don't care what society says. I don't care what your parents say. I don't care what whoever, like, I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there are consequences attached to it. It's like, I don't care. I'm doing that no matter how reckless it is. And those people, I think, end up with the best experience down the road, where they always love and adore this thing that they were completely attached to, that was completely reckless and was not smart. Like, there's a thousand reasons why it's not a great idea to get tattooed. It's expensive, it hurts, it's whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, because it's so socially acceptable, I think you have a lot of people that are just more prone to regret it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not so fringe now. And I think a lot of times those are the people that a few years later are like, man, I kind of wish I hadn't gotten that.
100%.
And that's what sucks about being the person applying it.
Yeah. It's not being elitist, I don't think, anyway, saying maybe it's not for you. That's fine. There's many things in this universe that are not for me, you know,
right.
and I'm okay with that. Like, you know, I mean, there's a guy, a tattooer right now. Sorry, I don't actually know his real name. I know him by his Instagram handle. A guy called Lip Rat, and he does fucking gnarly, really cool. Yeah, it's a good name, right?
What's his name?
Lip Rat, as in, I guess,
Rat.
like a mustache, you know. And he does. I love his shit. It's super cool. It's tough as hell. It's really interesting what he does. I'm sure there's some people that'll be like, that is not for me, you know, but it's like, it's really good and it's powerful. And he has a sticker, I think, that is, what's it say? Oh, yeah, tattooing is not a fucking hobby, you know, it's not your hobby. And I think that kind of circles back to like what the problem is with tattooing right now is, one of the many problems anyway, is people are like, oh yeah, I got into tattooing, I'm just starting to do tattoos, like it's kind of a hobby. And it's like, I don't know, maybe that's punk rock, maybe I'm an idiot, but like, it's fucking not a hobby, you know. It's not something you flirt with for a short time and go, I'm gonna do stained glass making now instead, you know. It's not one of those things. It's like, it's really life-changing for people. It hurts. It's fucking gnarly, and it's hard to get good at it.
Yeah,
you don't just dip your toe.
I remember having this conversation with Sean Barber, like, it was probably 15 years ago. You know, where, you know, and I don't remember exactly how it went, but he was basically saying, like, you know, it's fine to be a hobby painter. Like, there are plenty of people that just paint once or twice a month.
Yeah.
Where they, you know, go to the beach and paint a sunset or paint some landscapes or take a class, or like, that's totally fine. But when you're dealing with a human, like, that's not a possibility. Like, you should either be 100% in or 100% out, because the person that is wanting this tattoo, they take it very seriously.
Yeah.
And the catch is they don't anymore. Like, there is a whole generation of kids that they do not take it seriously.
No.
And they're fine with having little chicken scratch stuff all over them. So it's weird because, you know, I remember having that talk with Barber long time ago. And it was like, yeah, everybody, if they're coming to get tattooed, it's because they really love it and they want something beautiful. They want it perfect. So it's your job to deliver that. But that's not the truth anymore. People just want junk. They don't care. They just want to be covered, even if it's garbage. And it's like, oh man, weird. There is a market for being a junk hobbyist now, which I just would have never seen coming.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of contributing factors to that scenario. We didn't. Fuck, I'm going to say it. We didn't take care of it enough. We didn't. So there's a couple of things, right? The availability of supplies, the availability of machines and things like that. When we came up, even more so, you couldn't buy a tattoo machine. You couldn't fucking buy one unless you made it or you knew you had a mentor.
Yep.
But my first mentor would not allow me to buy a machine. He took the machine out of a locked drawer every morning. He would give it to me. I would tattoo it. He would take it off me at the end of the day. We'd clean it. He'd put it back, lock the drawer. Yep. And it was like, okay, that's not for everybody. Fine. But it taught me about the seriousness of what I was doing, and not so much like, oh, you're changing people's bodies forever for the rest of your life. Yeah, we figured that one out pretty quickly. But tattooing itself is a fucking magical thing, and I can't articulate it correctly. I'm an intelligent enough guy, but I just don't know how to put it into words. Anybody that does it or has tattoos on a larger scale gets it. It's magical. This thing that I'm giving you, that I'm allowing you to provide for yourself for the rest of your life with this thing's going to make you a lot of money, and it's going to enable you to have a home and children and all sorts, right?
Right.
This thing is very special. You don't get to just have this, okay? It goes back in its sleeping place, right? And it comes out again for you tomorrow, right? And it's just a fucking doorbell, we know it, but it's very special. And that stopped the moment that the doors opened in Amazon and anybody you buy a machine from, right? And it's not because I don't think people should be allowed to tattoo. They should. We should pass this on, because I can't tattoo everybody in the world, and I can't tattoo for 150, 300 years because I'll be dead. Yeah. So we have to make sure that through the correct system of apprenticeships, that we pass on something that's special to the next generation. And I don't know whether people stop doing that or just were like, no, fuck, we don't want to teach anybody. So then people went, well, fuck you. Like, what are you going to do? Break my legs? No one does that anymore. Yeah. So they just buy a kit.
Or ever did. And
right. Yeah. Right. But I mean,
how many thumbless tattooers have you met,
I mean, I have a good story about when I went to open my first shop, and I won't say who, because he was essentially kind of cool about it. But I said, I'm going to be 10 miles away from you. I just wanted to do the right thing and let you know, I was going to open a shop 10 miles, different town. He just emailed back, don't. That was fucking it. Don't. And I was young, I was like in my early 20s. And I called up another friend who was a tattooer, an older tattooer, and said, oh, so this guy said this. And they were like, yeah, I'd listen to him, man. He's like, he's serious. He's the real deal. And so I withdrew my application from the landlord and the town plan and said, I'm not going to open up there anymore, And I emailed him back and I said, thanks for the, I don't think I even said thanks for the warning, but thanks for the information. I've decided to withdraw my application to put a tattoo shop there. I'm going to go somewhere else. And he just wrote, smart choice. Oh no, good choices. And then never thought anything of it. 5 or 10 years later, I can't remember now, but I was reading a newspaper article because this town was close to where my mother lived still. I was back home and I was reading the paper, and it said local tattoo shop burned down in 3rd arson. And surprise, surprise, this was not the guy who threatened me. It was somebody else that opened up in the same town, had the shop burned down 3 times and kept going back and rebuilding it. I'm like, dude, take the fucking hint, The guy's been there on his own for 20 plus years now. I think he's probably just going to keep it that way. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that that's the answer. I do not think that that's the nice thing or the right thing to do.
But it's the reality. Yeah.
But it's the reality of it. So that shit did happen, Nowadays, You walk into it. I remember. Sorry, I'm kind of on one, but I remember going into shops, and you'd be like, "Oh, hey, I'm a tattooer too," and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing in here then? Fuck
Right.
off, like get
Yeah.
out." And I'm like, "What?" And now it's just like, "Oh, you want to open up next door to me? Okay, sure. What am I going to do?" It's like they didn't even. People don't even have the conversation anymore, being like, "That's not really okay, man." Somebody did it to me. Like the shop I opened up, what, be 15 years now. Back home in England, never been a tattooer in the town. Like I said, I opened up, we got busy, and within a year. And the thing is, it was so frustrating. The guy wasn't even a tattooer. He was a local rich kid whose dad was sick of him spending all his money on coke. So he was like, "What do you want to do?" And he was like, "All right, let's open a tattoo shop." And he opened it up literally across the road from me.
Yeah.
I went over and I was like, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing? This isn't hairdressers. You didn't even come in and introduce yourself, man. Let me see your portfolio." "Oh, the fuck, I'm not even a tattooer." I'm like, "Go fuck yourself, man." And he couldn't comprehend. He couldn't comprehend what my problem was,
Yeah. I've had that happen multiple times now.
Yeah, dude.
Where I've had people open up like a block away, or and they come
Like,
in like we're gonna be
hey.
friends, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm in a neighborhood, like there's no one around. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But and then the thing I've always rested in is they're never there long.
No,
like,
no, that's the thing. He wasn't,
right. You just wait it out. Like
Yeah.
like
But,
I
sorry.
now I've been in Tampa for 19 years with the shop, and it's hard. Like, it's hard to keep the doors open. It's tattooing does pay well, but it's an expensive thing to keep going also.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting to watch other people pop up, kind of with the mentality of like, oh yeah, like, I'll show up and I'll kill it. I'll move here from out of town, and I'll just open up and I'm going to absolutely kill it. And then, as time goes on, they're slow and they start to sweat it. So now it's just like just kind of like, oh, well, welcome to town, man. Like, enjoy the pressure.
See how well that works.
Yeah, see who's still around 3 years later. So.
But what's the answer though? I think one of the issues, I was talking with some friends today, is it that the maybe I'm giving away industry secrets. You could edit this out if you feel necessary, but the way that shops have always or used to be run, maybe you've either got your booth rental or your percentage. Like the house takes this, you get this kind of thing. I think, sorry, one of my dogs is coming. Hi, Tender. Our younger tattooers, because I do feel like the current generation, there is a certain level of entitlement to the way that they behave, and they whilst advocating for yourself and being confident in asking what you feel you deserve for yourself, right, is a good thing. I feel like, and I talk across the board as regards to professions. My veterinarian was saying this the other day. She was talking to some young kids, that were coming, about to be out of veterinary school. And they were like, well, I want, 6 figures out the gate, this, that, and the other. I will not work for anything less than this. I'm advocating for myself, and you should treat me correctly as a human being. It's like,
right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good luck with that. And I feel like, there's a lot of younger generation tattooers that are like, why the fuck would I work in a shop and give somebody a percentage of what I make when I can open up my private studio with a fucking fiddle fig plant and charge up the ass for a tattoo this big? Why would I do that?
Right.
And there's an entitlement in there because they're like, because I deserve that because I'm doing the work. You're not doing anything, Phil, for me. Right. Well, is that true? Did you do an apprenticeship? No. Okay. So, there's the fundamental start of the problem because you were never given the information you should have been given, I think that's a huge problem with it. There's this sense of entitlement and the lack of knowledge of really kind of how the fucking world works, and how we should care for one another and look after each other. But also tattoo shop owners should be giving correct apprenticeships to people when needed, like you don't have to, You know, not everybody wants to be a teacher or a mentor, you know. But
so I think about this a lot in the context of like, you know, apprenticeships, but also just employees where I've always had this, I don't know if I've ever even said this out loud. But it's just always been in the back of my mind. And I've always thought that part of the purpose of working for someone, especially someone great, you know, like, is, man, can I ride this out? And one day when, you know, their candle starts to shine a little dimmer, that gets passed on, right? Like, so it's kind of like how Rollo ended up with, you know, China Sea. Like, you know, eventually Jerry handed it off to him. I saw that Trevor McStay passed Dynamic off to Joel. And it's like, yeah, that's why. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you went into, you know, a job, a business setting, and if you went into it where you're like, well, you know, like, I'm gonna work for this guy and I'm gonna grind only so that one day I get his empire, then I don't think it works. Like, I think you'd find yourself sorely disappointed that that's not how it actually works out. But it is not necessarily, I feel like it's a odd like investment of, you know, if you stayed loyal somewhere and you could manage like this longevity, like eventually the guy's going to pass the torch off to you. No one's going to attach you forever. And so if say you went and worked for someone for years and years and years and years, and that never happened, you are by default getting all of this wisdom and knowledge and clientele and skills. And there are all these other things that are getting passed off. It might not be the name of the studio. It might not be the location, you know, but when you have someone that has run this race for a really long time, you know, I think Trevor's just oddly a really good example because it just happened. I don't know how well you know him, and I don't know if you know the story at all. I haven't talked to Trevor in years, but you know, I think he opened up Dynamic, I think in 1991 or 92, you know, so now we're looking at, you know, 30 some years that this studio has been going on, and now he's got grandkids, and you know, he wants a little time off. It makes sense to move it into someone else's hands, and you know, that guy earned his trust. You know, so I think those are the benefits that that will never exist for someone in a private studio.
Never.
And those are the things that this like newer generation is probably missing out on, is just the wealth that comes from working for someone for a long time. And I'll admit, I've not really done that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I did spend a lot of time working with, you know, fantastic, great tattooers, but I never stayed anywhere very long. And now looking back on it, it's like, you know, I did what I had to do, but I lost out on a lot by constantly moving and constantly jumping and, you know, absorbing as much as I could. I don't know if it was as beneficial as just sticking with one person for a really long time, you know?
Yeah. There's something to be said for it, for sure. Because that's, you know, at least when I started in England, that was kind of the expected thing. And I broke the norm, you know. I moved on from my first mentor, you know, 3-ish years in, I think. Like, it's a real shame, to be honest. He was very old school, you know. And I tried to do it the right way, but, you know, like looking back on it, I'm like, I still left, you know, like he thought I was going to be there forever, you know. And it was, I actually got offered a TV show, you know, the whole fucking London Ink thing. And I ended up turning it down because like he was like, well, if you do that, you can whistle, Sonny, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, man. And I understood that. I didn't have an issue with that, like, you know. And I actually turned it down just because I thought the people that were making it they didn't care about tattooing. They just wanted to make, you know, dramatic television. I was like, I love tattooing. I'm not into that. And no disrespect to anybody that's done tattoo shows, like, but it wasn't for me. But then it left this kind of weird divide between us, you know, and I was like, I think I'm going to go travel, you know, and I thought we were able to still be friends, and you know, we cut the ties, and that was it. I was never able to speak to him again, which is really sad, you know, because he's a fucking good dude and an incredible tattooer. Passed away recently, actually, and a real loss to the tattooing world. But so, you know, I didn't necessarily do it the way that it was kind of done in when I grew up. And there's something to be said for it, for sure. I mean, kind of just, I guess, tapping into that, there's something to be said for working in a shop environment with a bunch of pirates, you know, regardless of who that is. Like, tattoo shops used to be, and I'm sure there's still a lot that are, you know, fun places to be in for clients, for you as a tattooer, for the people that work there as like front of house, back of house, body piercers, whatever. Like, it was a hoot to be in a shop, you know. You listen to music all day, you bullshit with your friends, you know, it's a little rowdy at times, you're meeting some really interesting, because regardless of where you tattoo, right, what kind of neighborhood you tattoo in, even nowadays where it's become so sanitized, you know, like you work with the public, you work with interesting people, we'll say. Like, there's always some fruitcake that, you know, and it may be Chad the banker, you know, that kind of falls into this normal, you know, pattern of behavior. You think, then you meet them, and you're like, how the fuck does that guy put his shoes on in the morning, you know? Like, and we've all got those clients and those client experiences that are, whoa, that dude was a trip. Or like, do you remember when so-and-so's client like smelled so bad and you had to put the fan on that direction, but you didn't want to upset them, so you didn't say anything, you know? Like, tattoo shops, like, regardless, that was something that was part of the magic of tattooing. And for the clients too, because they'd be like, they loved it. They'd go home and like, I was a client before I was a tattooer, you know, and like, you go home and be like, you'll never believe what happened in the shop today. And, you know, my tattooer said this, and it made me feel really good about myself, you know, because tattoos are cool, you know. And like, working in that shop environment is amazing. It's fucking great. And when everybody is sat in a private studio, they're not getting that. Their clients aren't getting that, you know. And it's a shame. I think people are missing out. And please don't get me wrong, you know, I think like a quiet, private space for people. I draw a big distinction between somebody like yourself. I'm trying to think of somebody else that I know who has, you know, kind of works on their own. And I can't now, but, you know, there's a big difference between a tattooer like yourself or you know, somebody that has like done 20 odd years of tattooing and they have, you know, a clientele working on their own in a studio, you know, a professional space, and tattooers going straight into private studios, or 2-year tattooers being
right. They're missing out on so much by doing that.
And their clients are missing out on so much, you know. And you know, one of the things I love about tattooing is it kind of circles back a little bit to like the sanitization, if that's even a real word, of tattooing. But like, tattooing brings the toughness out in anybody that gets one. Occasionally you get a client that you're just like, oh, you're not built for this. Like, you don't know discomfort. You don't understand. Your life is very easy because you are fucking freaking out right now. How often does that happen? Very rare, right?
Very rare.
Know? Most of the time people can suck it up and get through it, regardless of, we know how bad that shit hurts. It really is painful, you know? And, you know, it brings that fucking inner warrior out in a lot of people. That sounds a little hokey and corny, but like, it does. You see somebody walk in that might be like kind of meek and mild and a little quiet and a little nervous, and they get their first tattoo and their fucking chest goes like this, you know? And it's like, that's awesome. I fucking love that. And they had to run the gauntlet of walking into a weird space with a bunch of weird people in there and like sign this waiver, and then there's like loud music maybe, or like somebody saying some cuss words, you know, and they had to like weather this fucking storm to get something they really, really want. Regardless of all of those obstacles, they got it. And you know what? They came out tougher for the experience, not just the tattoo, right? And we're now kind of entering a time when it's like, and I really do believe in creating a space that is great for fucking everybody. I want everybody to feel included in the party and to feel safe and
for
feel
sure.
happy. However, I feel like as a society, we are getting very soft in that we're offering an opportunity. Okay, so you can email me. I don't like talking to people over the phone. So if you email me, I will email you back with a questionnaire. And then you can tell me what kind of music you would like to be played. And it's like, we are pandering so hard, or like being told on Instagram by these tattoo influencers that this is how you should approach getting a tattoo. You should fucking write in with your playlist and your options and this, that, and the other. And you know, it's like, you should feel 100% safe and cared for and catered to when you're in any environment as regards to being tattooed. I am not saying any different from that. However, running the fucking gauntlet of emotion that was going into a tattoo shop that might be a little bit intimidating is good for you. As a human being, it will build somewhat of a resilient character. And I think that that is one of the things that is magical about tattooing. It makes you feel stronger in yourself, right?
To be fair, though, to be fair, you also think that with being punched in the mouth.
I do.
Yeah. And so you gotta realize that you are built different, and some people, they recoil from being punched in the mouth, you know.
True.
And you think it makes you stronger, and you're not wrong. You're totally right.
I know. We need a little bit more of that.
We have a weird head tweak on suffering, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, you know me, and you know, any of my clients or people that know me know I'm a big softie. You know, I really enjoy making people feel comfortable. You know, it's one of my, I would say, I don't think that I am like very good or like a high level operator in many things in the world. I'm proficient at a lot, but making people feel like comfortable, I feel like is one of my superpowers, right? Yeah. So I will get a client that is this way, from this walk of life, from this societal group, and they will leave feeling really fucking stoked, you know? And like, it's not a show. I'm not doing it to like win their favor or anything. It's just like something I enjoy doing, is making people feel fucking good about themselves, right? So I definitely don't want to ever create an environment that is unpleasant or rejects anybody. You know, I kind of go out of my way to do the opposite, but I do also feel like you can still do that in a really positive way. Like, so if you're a coach, like a jiu-jitsu coach, right? You know, you're asking people to put themselves in a situation that is unpleasant at majority of the fucking time, right? Like training hurts, sucks for so many reasons, right? But as a good coach, you offer them strength and encouragement and compassion and fucking love and all of the things we need as human beings to progress, right? In ourselves and in our view of our own self, right? And I'm saying that I feel like if we just soften everything and make it that, you know, we take any grit out of everything in life, like we become very, very soft and we are not resilient to life, and life kicks you in the dick, right? We all know that. Everybody has struggled in life, you know, with, you know, things that happen to you, things that happen to family, health, mental health, all of these things. And if we continue, I feel, to like baby everything, we're not equipping people with the skill set to survive those bumps in the road, you know. And like, I love the fact that like tattooing is one of those things that might just toughen you up just enough to not take that situation so seriously or be that upset by them. And don't get me wrong, there's people in this world that are built, like you say, they're built differently and they're fragile and they need a little bit of extra care and a little bit of extra support, and like the fucking loud music or the, you know, I work with a guy who was real loud, you know, and he would yell, and sometimes I'd be like, dude, read the room. Like, my clients got a fucking emotional support teddy bear with them.
Yeah, right.
They don't need you shouting. They're very nervous, you know. So there are people in the world that, you know, like they come into it differently and they need that special attention. the majority of people in this world, I don't think are like that. And I think they could just do with a little bit of a
switches
cuff.
case by case. You know what I mean?
It does. But then being able to
I'm
read the
almost
room
thinking
is
more about jujitsu than I am with tattooing. But it's like it takes a certain amount of knowledge of the person to know how much pressure they can eat.
Yeah.
And you got
that's very true.
You want to get them to the edge of that pressure. You don't want to break them, but you do want them to feel the weight of what they've gotten themselves into. You know what I mean? Like you don't want
the consequence.
Yeah, I mean, I go through this with my wife quite a lot. Where it's like it's important for her to understand what the pressure is, because she's small, like she's 110 pounds, and I mean, she's been training for probably 4 years now, and if everybody goes really soft on her because she's small, she'll have a false sense of security. And then when she does get out, if something were to ever happen in a self-defense sort of way, she's going to get hit with pressure that she didn't know existed.
And then it all falls apart real quick.
So in order for anybody to actually do her a favor, they have to push her to the point where, like, to the point of injury without getting injured. Like you never want to injure your training partners, but you always want to take them as close to that as you can, depending on the person, but you want them to feel the pressure and the speed and you want all of that, without breaking them. And that's such a hard thing to do. It's like, and I think, when it comes to clients and stuff too, it is really hard to know, like, especially if it's a new client, like what are they coming in with, and how do you meet them where they're at, and like not necessarily coddle the entitled brat. Like you don't want to do that, but you do want them to leave a little bit stronger, and you do want to take them, I mean, I do it all the time with my clients, where it's like, I'll try to, as I get to know them, it's like, man, I think you got 30 more minutes in you, bud. Like, I think you got 30 more in you, or it'll be the opposite, where I'm like, hey man, you're done. Like you're done
for today.
I can tell you're done. It's cool. Let's just stop here so that you don't regret this, or have like a negative. Like I try not to get my clients to a point where when they think about the tattoo, they're like, man, that was a terrible experience. And I've had some on me that in hindsight, when I think about them, I'm like, ugh, it's just terrible. Super long sessions, hurt really bad. And it's like, I don't want people to have that. I want them to think about it and be like, yeah, that was like, I got through that. I didn't break, rather than being like, oh no, that was terrible. Like I feel like I died and I lost part. You know what I mean? Like, so you can push too far for sure. It's just really hard to know who that person is and where their threshold lies.
I had that yesterday. I caught a guy someone? I was like, say that again.
You broke someone?
No. I feel like that again. That's one of my skill sets is being able to sense that kind of thing. Like, I felt like yesterday we were outlining a back piece, and I warned him up front because he's a really nice guy. He has one or two small tattoos, and he feels it. And he asked me about a back piece, and I was like, I'm gonna let you know out the gate. It's gonna cost you as much as a car. It's gonna be very time consuming, and it's gonna hurt quite a lot. You're going to be able to get through it, but it's really a big commitment. I used to just be like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Cool. Come on. Oh, excited back piece. Now I'm trying to put you off before we start, because I'm like, this is a big commitment for both of us, and I want to make sure that you kind of know what you're jumping into. Like, I know you got a couple of little things here, and they're awesome. They're good tattoos. This is a different world,
Different world.
And he went for it. I was like, all right, good for you. And it's super cool. It's a big, nice traditional Cap Coleman design. And I was like, in all honesty, I think I want to split up the outline. We'll do 2 or 3 sessions of the outline, okay? Because it's all 14 round, for everything. Yeah. So it's gonna be flying, and I don't like hurting people, so outlining things like that, kind of, it doesn't stress me out in that the technical side of it. Like, it's, you know, I know I can do it, but it's like, I'm going to have to hurt this person quite a lot because there's no way around a 14 round liner back piece. You know, it's like, it's going to be painful. And, you know, we got the top of the anchor done, and we got one of the kind of weird, creepy, sharky dolphins down one side. And I was going to, and that's all I put both dolphins on and the top of the anchor. I was like, if we get through that, that's awesome. But if you're struggling at any point, let me know. We did the top one side, and it starts to get down to like the back of the ribs here towards the end of the first side. And I was like, I don't know how he's feeling right now. You know, he's fidgeting a little bit. And he comes back, and I switch him for the other side. And I started just at the top of we had a little bit of the ankle left. And he immediately, you know, starts to shake. And I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is, we haven't started the second dolphin shark, I'm going to call it. So let's call it, because your body's telling you no. I know that you're going to tell me different, and even mentally, you're like, no, man, I can go longer. But you're starting to go into like shock, you know, you're shaking. And I've been there, you know, like when I got my chest outlined, like, I'm like, no, dude, just keep going. And he's like, I can't. You're fucking moving up and down, you know? Right. And he was cool about it. He actually went, yeah, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to leave today feeling good about it. And I do right now, but I don't physically feel very good. And I was like, cool, this is the perfect point, you know, like, or maybe if we stopped 5 minutes ago, it would have been the perfect point. But like,
take them to their threshold and
and then again, it kind of goes back to what I said, and then you kind of said as well. You do exactly that. You take them there, because I was like, all right, we got 2 minutes to just finish the edge of the anchor, because then you know, I don't have to bother trying to stencil a straight line or draw a straight line on next time. Just, you got 2 minutes in you can do it. And he's like, yeah, I got that. And you feel their body relax straight away, because they know it's over. They know all they got to do is like breathe 4 more times and it's done. Their body relaxes, they stop shaking, you get through it. And then they feel really good about themselves when they left, because they're like, I fucking did it. I got through that. He said it was cool to stop now, so I don't feel like I backed out, you know? And I think that thing of learning, when you can feel somebody's like starting to get to that point, you're like, I'm going to make the decision for you, you know, like, I'm going to take that away from you, because I know what the human brain is going to try and tell me. You're going to be like, no, I'm good. It's like, let's call it, man, you know?
Well, and I think that in general just builds better relationships with your clients, thus more longevity, and then it, you know, spills over into just, you know, being more efficient anyways. So
I was listening to a very interesting podcast recently, and I know that you'll identify with this. A guy called Mark Rhodes, who is I think a personal trainer, but to an incredibly high level. You know, he coaches athletes and professionals, and he's an ex English military. I'm not sure if it was Special Forces or not. I've just kind of discovered him and found him a fascinating guy. And so, as a new tattooer or a new jiu-jitsu practitioner, right, there is this temptation, especially if you're the type of personality that I feel that we are. You're very highly motivated, you're very driven, you're very focused on whatever it is that you're grabbing, which for new tattooers is going to be tattooing, you know, for new practitioners of jiu-jitsu, that's going to be it. And the one piece of advice that, and this is going to sound so strange coming from me, because I only discovered this in the last year, and I actually only acknowledged it in the last few days when I heard him talk about this thing called toxic, and I hate using that word because it's very commonly used or overly used now, but toxic productivity, right? So when you are the type of personality that we are, and you have that high drive and that high motivation, we live in a society that, through social media, through web influences, through our peers, you know, that tell us that if what we are not doing is not productive or towards that thing that we are trying to achieve, we are fucking wasting our time. We are not doing enough. We need to be grinding hard. I fucking hate that phrase. You know, like we have to be continuously doing something that is productive and towards this end goal, right? And what actually happens, and I realized this listening to it, I'm going, oh my God, this guy's talking directly to me. He is talking about my life, right? And this is something that really has kind of been jammed into my head over the last couple of days. We're working so hard, but our performance is so low because we are fucking overstimulating ourselves. Our nervous system is stressed. We're in this constant state of anxiety because we're working too much. We're doing too much, and we're not thinking in the correct way about how we're getting to this end goal. And sorry, the phone is dinging away. And he basically talks about how the importance of taking breaks and resting and stopping doing and stopping thinking. And that can be for 5 minutes. It could be for 15 minutes. It could be for a week's vacation. You know, my nickname is No Chill. I don't know how to relax. I never take vacations. I never do anything to relax. I don't know how to relax. I don't know how to sit still, which transfers into this obsession with tattooing or jiu-jitsu. It's all you want to do. It's all you think about. It's you train 5 days a week, you train twice a day, or you draw 24/7 and you're not good enough. And then you get into this cycle of self-deprecation if you fail to do, you know, enough, or because you're exhausted, you don't perform like you want to. And so I'm doing a horrible job of it explaining the theory, but it is this obsession with continually working on it and being productive, and you're actually not achieving anything at all, or it's detrimental. You need to take those breaks, because what happens is you essentially, and this happened to me last year, you know, I hit fucking burnout. You know, I hit that point where I had essentially, you know, without sounding dramatic about things, I had a mental breakdown, you know, like I fucking couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't go to work. I was having anxiety attacks trying to get into the car. And, you know, I got brain fog. I couldn't think my way through a conversation. It was really weird. I was like, whoa, this is not normal. Like, I'm just feeling a bit tired or a bit overworked, you know. I'm struggling having conversations. I'm losing track of what I'm saying. Like I have dementia, you know. And it was like, and I had to go to the doctor, and the doctor was like, dude, you got to stop. Like you've hit this point where your body and your brain are in this cycle of anxiety. Like your limbic system is just going, fuck, there's a fucking giant bear that's trying to kill you all the time. Because you're putting yourself in a state of stress all the time. So your nervous system doesn't know that it's just because you're trying to work or you're trying to go to the gym. It doesn't understand the difference. It's just going, run, you know, or fight. It's doing one of those things. And it's a very weird way to go about saying, you have this new thing, you're coming into a new industry and you're obsessed, or you're coming into a new sport and you're obsessed and you want to get as good as you can, as quick as you can. Well, one surefire way of not doing that is by being a moron like myself, or, you know, I'm going to throw you under the bus there as well, Phil. I'm going to say that, like, that obsessive need to be on it all the time, you know, sorry, the computer's being weird, is not beneficial to you. Take some breaks, be a good partner, hang out with your kids or your wife, your boyfriend, your husband, whatever, your dogs. Take 10 minutes every now and then just to not think about tattooing and not think about jiu-jitsu. Like, and I did not understand that until these last few days. And it was like a lightning bolt. I was like, oh, I'm been given permission by somebody who I respect as a human to stop and let things fall into place. It's like, you know, when an old computer, you used to have to turn them off to defrag. Remember the
Yeah,
defragging the
right.
Hyde Park, right? Our brains and bodies need that. And
So I don't remember what the principle is, but I'll post it on this video somehow. But there's when I was taking piano lessons, and there was one of the principles in piano is it's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Yeah.
And so what they found is that if you practice piano for 25 minutes, and then you take 5 minutes of solitude, like just you're not on your phone, you're not playing a game, you're not cooking, you just kind of meditate or chill. Like you don't even have to meditate, but just shut off for 5 minutes. You can then practice for another 25 minutes, and then you could shut off for 5 minutes, and you could basically do that all day.
Yeah,
like your brain will allow you the ability to learn in these like 25-minute segments. You just adapt to it. Whereas, man, I mean, and then, you take it a step further, like pretty much, the Sabbath has been a thing that's been practiced and celebrated from the beginning of time. And it's like, hey, you work 6 days a week, and then you take one day off to just thank God and chill out and do nothing. Doesn't matter what's going on, you do nothing.
Yeah.
And it's a reset. It's just this constant, like, taking the time to chill out and realize that you're not in control of your universe. Everything's going to be okay. You actually learn faster and you work more. You get more done because you're not burnout and running through these frantic, tasks or whatever.
Yeah. Your productivity actually goes up, the less you do.
If I was to give advice, it would be the same, which isn't surprising consider we are spiritual doppelgangers over here. But dude, I mean, my first 15 years, like just burnout. Yeah. Just like worked all the time. Yeah. And I don't know what for, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I was striving for, but I think I would have been more efficient had I taken some time. So
and it was really interesting when you asked me that question, because I had in mind this podcast that I'd been listening to, because it was very profound for me,
Yeah, you'll have to send me a link and I'll post it on this.
Yeah, I will. And I urge anybody that is interested in performance in any way, even just as a fucking partner, as a friend, I think it's relevant. And it was so weird. One of those eye-opening conversations that you listen to and you go, oh man, 43 years.
Light bulb.
Oh, Jesus. I'm not wasting my time or anything like that, but it just takes one conversation or one person that you are impressed by, as an individual, to say something or put something a certain way, and it feels like they're speaking directly to you. And I'm like, wow, we could all benefit from this, because everybody I know, that's a creative type, has that type of like drive. And so when you said, what is it that you would offer somebody? I started thinking about specifics to regards to either one of those pursuits. And I was like, oh no, now's the time. Because if somebody had given me permission years ago and told me, dude, if you stay up till 3 a.m. and then get up an hour earlier because then you want to do this and you want to fit the gym in, it is going to make you perform worse across the board as a human being in every aspect of your life. It might have made a difference, it might not, because the problem is the type of personalities we have. We hit this point where you crash and have this fucking meltdown.
I would say I'm 47. I'd say probably since I was about 41, I've started to let go and chill out and just be comfortable with, my having a normalized pace. And sometimes I'll go through like spurts of chaos, but there is also a weird side where I recognize that sort of chaos when I was in my 20s was it was kind of the, like, I don't want to say study hall, but I was learning very, very fundamental stuff. And the only way to get any of that down was to just work nonstop. It was like a frantic search to find a thing. And then once I found the thing, it was like, okay, now I can kind of like rest. So I get it. It's when you're young, it is hard to know how to find balance in that pursuit. It's super, super hard to find balance.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It is.
that's awesome advice.
Yeah. I hope it helps someone, because it's very easy to allow your passion to eat itself. Essentially, it's like the snake in the tail.
Yep.
It's we become very self-critical and because none of us are particularly, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like as humans, we're not very kind to ourselves. We're not very forgiving or compassionate towards ourselves. So what's the immediate reaction to failure because we're tired or whatever is, oh, it's your fault. You criticize yourself, you don't give yourself any compassion there. And so if just saying that allows somebody to kind of go, oh, so I can just take a break. I can give some attention to this instead of that or whatever, helps, fucking great. Because, it's important.
Yeah, and I mean, for us, we have to schedule that stuff.
Dude, you 100%.
Yeah, if it's not in my schedule, I will fill all of the gaps, with a wife and kids and all the extracurricular things we do. Like if I don't put blocks of time in to reset, everything will get scheduled, and it'll just be like another art show, another project, and it gets out of control,
And the thing
back to being like ADHD curses. It's just I mean, dude,
the
other day I went down this crazy rabbit hole of just looking at vintage sewing machines. And it was just like, the old like hand crank, like the ones you like, for like shoe cobblers and stuff.
Yeah.
Before you know it, I'm like watching videos on how to like rebuild these things, and I'm just like, oh, dude, stop! Like, I'm not rebuilding old shoe cobbling machines. Why am I? But I just get fascinated with it, and it's like I could do that. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like, and I totally don't agree with that stay in your lane garbage. But kind of, you know what I mean? Like, kind of, because like some people need to get out of their lane, and some people like me probably need to stay in theirs, because I already have 7 or 17 or whatever.
Yeah, you're like a highway in Texas. I don't know which one it is, but it's the first time I drove across the States. I think it was maybe near Dallas. I came in this fucking giant highway that had like 12 lanes across.
Yeah, network of chaos.
Yeah.
All clogged up with cars and no one's going anywhere. That's a good example. That's my brain.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time out to do this
Dude, of course.
again. So take 2. So hopefully this audio actually works.
Hopefully it works, and hopefully it was as good as the first one. I wasn't just ranting about it. Well, I was probably ranting last time too.
It's funny, man. Like this was a totally different one than the first one. Like we didn't touch on any of the same stuff. That one was way more. We talked way more about jiu-jitsu.
Talked a lot about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And so I wish there was more of it that was salvageable, but this one's great. So
awesome.
Let's touch base again soon.
Yeah, definitely, man. It was really good talking to you, man.